Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Luis, and in this video, I'll be going over how I use Notion as a medical student. So with the transition to online classes here in the Philippines, a lot of major universities have made the premium features of certain apps like Notion available for free for its students. So by using the .edu email provided by your school, you can use the Personal Pro plan for free by just simply switching it in the settings of your account. So in this video, I'll be going over how I use Notion to organize my notes and requirements, how I use it to understand my lectures in school, and finally, how I use Notion to memorize the information in my lectures. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content like this. Anyway, let's start the video. So what I like about Notion is that it allows me to view my notes and requirements in many different ways. So here, as you can see, we're at the landing page for when you create a new workspace in Notion when you have a brand new account. So as an example, I'll create a new page. So here we have a brand new page, and it's basically a blank canvas for you to do anything you want. So for example, I'll name this school. And then I'll add an icon, which is a nice thing I like about Notion, is that it allows you to add custom icons or some emojis so that you can personalize your workspaces. So here, since it's school, I added the emoji for school. And then what I like using is the Kanban board. So you just type /board, which is the command for Notion to make it understand that you want to put a Kanban board in your workspace. So here we're gonna select the board inline, and then it creates this template. So it gives you 3 cards here and three columns, 3 progress columns. So this allows you to easily track what your progress in specific tasks, whether you haven't started yet and you have to do it next, or if you're currently doing it, or if you're already completed. So for example, I can type here in the first card is like, comment, and subscribe to ChinoyMD. So this one, like, I can put it here under not started, which will prompt me to understand that, oh, I have to do this next. So like once I've actually started doing the task, I can put it under in progress, and then once I've completed it, I can put it under the completed column. And you don't need to stick to the names of these columns, because Notion allows you to rename this. So like you can rename this to do next, and then you can rename this to doing. So stuff like that. It's this level of customizability that makes Notion just really neat to use, because you can fit it to your needs. And if you feel that 3 columns isn't enough to track your progress, you can add another column. So like, for example, since it's school, I like to add study periods, so I can indicate when I put it in calendar view what certain events are, so it doesn't clutter up the specific individual tasks. So like study period. Okay, so another neat thing about Notion is that with this board, you can see the progress of things. But what happens if you want to see when stuffing is due or when an event is gonna occur? The nice thing about it is that you can, without having to add a calendar, although you could add one separately by just like typing @ calendar, you could add a calendar inline to Notion and allow you to see events. But what if like you want to integrate the Kanban board with the calendar? So you can do that by going to view, add view, and then you have these options here, and you can actually add calendar. So create, and then now you have a calendar view of your Kanban board. So if you want to revert back, you can just go back down to this drop down menu, and then go back, select board view, and then you can go back again to your Kanban board. So say you have your teacher tells you that you have a project or exam on a certain day. So what you can do is that you can select the day. Say that you have a quiz on Wednesday, July 29. You say quiz. Yeah, so you just write quiz, July 29, and then it'll be here. But when you switch back to your board view, it will appear on your notes no status bar. So that's the beauty of it, that there's a flow and there's continuity between the different views, so that you can see it in the calendar view, and then you can see it again in the Kanban view. And then like you can put it under to do next to tell yourself that this is something that's upcoming, so that so just for organization purposes. And then another nice thing that you can do is that you can change the properties, and that you can change the different things that you can see about events or requirements that you put in your Kanban board. So you can assign the status, but that's not needed. Like it will make its status based on what column it's in to appear on below, but that's not needed since the status is already appearing at the top. So if you don't want that to be seen, since it's redundant, you can go back to properties and then just toggle off status and it'll be gone. But like, if you want to see the date in your Kanban, because that would be useful, you can turn that on, and then the date that you've assigned by including the date by when you inputted it in the calendar will appear there. So that's a really nice view. So another really nice thing that I like about Notion is that you can create pages within pages. So for example, I want to create a notebook for my cardiology class in med school. So I can create a new page, and this page will be accessible within the notebook. So like it's like a subfolder within a folder. So here I'll just call this cardiology, and then you can using the icons. Oh, I can click the heart, because for me, like to remind me that this is cardiology, and just makes it look prettier overall. And then here I can create a table so that I can organize my notes in a very neat fashion. So I can create a table, and then it's like inline. So like don't select full page unless you want there to be a separate page for your for that function. So like full page here would create a separate page just for that table. So if you go back to your main, it'll be here. But we don't want that because it makes it harder to see everything overall. So let's delete that, and then just put a table inline. And then what this does, it creates a table just like any standard table you see in Excel or any word processor. So like throughout the sem, the lectures accumulate, and you need a nice easy way to organize your notes. And this is what the table feature of Notion allows you to do, so that I can add my notes to like say heart physiology. What this allows me to do is to have a very easy way to see the details of every single one of my notes without having to open up each and every one of them. So here I can categorize them and then label this as lecture, so that I know this is a lecture. But you can also add other notes. Say that you had a SGD, or let's say you decided to take initiative, and then you decide and wanted to read up on a certain topic that wasn't necessarily discussed, so you can put book. So to note that it wasn't lectured upon, but you took it from the book, so that you know what notes are from the lecture and what notes are your own personal that you did by yourself. And then here under files, you can actually embed. So say that you took notes on another device, and you exported it via PDF, and you uploaded it to your Google Drive account. You can actually take that link and embed it here, or you can take the actual PDF and upload it here so that you have access to it within Notion. And that's a very handy feature. And also what I like to do is add more columns so that you have extra levels of organization if you want to organize it in a specific way. So under this column, I can put it like lecturer, so I know who the lecturer was when the for this note, and then I can also put what week it was done, so that I can, if I want to organize it later by week. So say like I am gonna study for my week 2 exam, I won't see the week 1 topics at the top. So it's much easier for me to access them. So here we can set it to number, so that you can only input so you can only input numbers instead of letters. So you can drag it to move it. So you can drag the columns to move them wherever you want, so you can better easily see them. So here's like week 1, heart physiology. The nice thing about Notion is that with all these details, you can see all the pertinent information about the note without actually having to open up the note and see all the huge amount of information that you put inside. You can just see the pertinent details about when, what kind of note is it, who the lecturer was, when was it made. So if you want to actually see the contents, you can open it up, and then you can see where all your notes for that lecture. Obviously here, since it's blank, since we just made it. So as an example, I can show my personal notes. So here I am in my personal Notion workspace, and then I'm gonna open up like my notes that I made during the latter half of the semester when we started doing online learning. So here I have my med juris and legal medicine notes. So let's, as an example, I'll open up my legal med, and then let's see forensic psychiatry. So like here, I can open up and see all my notes on that I made on it, and you can see my organization, that like everything here, my notes here were based on the chances that my classmates made on the lecture. So here I'll open up med juris, and then you can see that I organized it in similar manner to the sample template that I just made. Obviously the template I just made is more refined because this is what I was just using for when I was still experimenting with the Notion features. So like here I can open up the overview, the Philippine political and legal system, and here like it shows my notes completely separate from the other details that are not necessarily important. Although you still can access them here at the top, but you can easily access them in the table view, which is a really nice feature. So the first thing I do when I'm trying to learn new material is that I try to understand the core concepts first behind the lecture. And although it's tempting to sometimes focus on memorizing the specific lab values or little tidbits of trivia, you should not fall into that trap, because come exam time, most of the questions will be applications of the core concepts of the lecture. And as a result, you should focus more of your time on memorizing and understanding those core concepts. So a good example of that is my board review notes for anatomy, which I've been doing over the past summer. And what I've done is that I've organized them in such a way that I understand where they came from. So it allows me to see the big picture, so I don't lose the forest from the trees. So here, these are my notes from watching the lecture series on Lecturio, which is a USMLE review resource. So I organize my personal notes based on the topic of each video. So here's small stomach and esophagus, small intestine, large intestine, peritoneum, liver, gallbladder. And what this allows you to do is that I want to focus on learning the small intestine, is that I can easily go to that portion, as opposed to like if it didn't have that header, I'd have to look into each question specifically and to figure out, oh, is this a question or a note on the small intestine. So it makes it easier for me to learn the topic that way and organize my notes. So the nice thing about Notion is that if you say you want to create supplementary notes on the topic, and it's not necessarily directly related to the topic that you're studying, but it will help you understand the core concepts better, you can create a separate page within the notes, so that it allows you to have access to it but not clutter up the notes completely. So say here in the small intestine, you want to look into the different diseases that affect the small intestine in regards to with regards to the possible physical pathologies that can occur. So you can make a page for that, and then say like, oh, diseases of the small intestine, and then you can like fill up all your notes here. So like you can type in all your notes here. You can and organize it any way you want, and that's the beauty of it. So that when you go back to your main set of notes, it's all still in an original way that you found it, but you still have access to the supplementary note that you made, and it doesn't clutter up compared to if you had actually written the notes in line with your primary notes. As I mentioned in my videos about how I study, I use active recall and spaced repetition to help me memorize the information I need for my exams. And how I use Notion for this is through the Cornell note-taking system, and by creating a retrospective revision timetable for my lecture notes. So going to some of the notes that I made during my second semester, I can show how I use the Cornell note-taking system using the toggle feature in Notion for my to help test myself. So what the Cornell note-taking system looks like is basically like this, where you have the questions on the left hand side and the answers to them, and your notes on the right hand side. And although that this is what is typically done, especially with paper and pen, I found that it's not as efficient, because I don't want to have to put my hand over the screen just to block the notes. So using the toggle feature in Notion, I decided to just start making questions for myself within my notes, so that I could just simply ask them. So like, what is so for example, I asked, what is jurisdiction? So like I don't know the answer right now, but like the point of this is that by blocking out the notes, it forces me to try to recall the information, and if I can't really, that's the time I reveal it, or once I've come up with an answer that I've said aloud or written down on a piece of paper, I can go check the answer. So like, jurisdiction is the power of the courts to exercise authority over persons, things within a territory, allowing them to make legal decisions and judgments. And as I said in my previous video on active recall, this strengthens the information in my brain, because it helps reinforce the neural connections. And by incorporating spaced repetition, which I talked about in another video, it will allow me to remember these things for longer. So another example is, as I revealed earlier in the videos, is my board review notes. So in anatomy, basically almost all my notes were in question form. So like, what are the boundaries of the inguinal canal, like deep ring, middle ring, superficial ring, etc. And by hiding the answers to these underneath, I force myself to try to recall if I actually remember the information, rather than just passively rereading the notes, which, as shown in the literature, simply rereading is probably the worst way to try to retain information, because it doesn't really challenge our brain to try to retrieve the information from our minds. So another feature that I like is that Notion allows you to simply just like drag and drop images into your notes. So like, so for example here, like one of the questions here, oh, what are the branches of the superior mesenteric artery? So like I put in parentheses here 6 to remind myself that there are 6 branches that I have to think about. So I know how many to enumerate. So after like say I already gave the information, I can toggle it open and then see the answers to it. And then as a supplementary, I included like a screenshot from the video lecture that I can just drag and drop into the note so that I have a visual representation of the information rather than just simply the text version of it. And that's how I utilize Notion to do active recall. And this is like a nice alternative to flashcards, because flashcards it tends to make you lose the forest from the trees, because makes you memorize such specific details that you don't get the general concept. And the beauty of Notion is that this form of active recall allows me to memorize the facts while keeping a general idea of the big picture. So like say I'm memorizing the process steps in the Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle, I can have the ability to go back and see like, oh, what's the process in general, rather than just memorizing the individual step and not really knowing what comes before and after, which you can't really do in flashcard apps. Although like flashcard apps have their own, flashcards in general have their own merit in that it allows you to memorize specific pieces of information that you generally don't need much context on, because you just need to understand it as it is, as opposed to processes where knowing the steps that comes before and after kind of helps you understand the specific step that you're trying to memorize. So going to spaced repetition, as I discussed in my previous video, is that spaced repetition allows you to slow down the rate of forgetting. And how you can utilize this in Notion is by creating a retrospective timetable, as I learned from the YouTuber Ali Abdal. And here I created a retrospective timetable that I'll be using later this school year once it begins. And what I like about Notion is that it allows you to create relational databases. So here I made a notebook template, which is similar to the one I showed earlier in how I organize my notes. And here I created like a sample notes. And what I like about using the relational data feature of Notion is that on the retrospective timetable, so I see here like revision 1, 2, and 3, I can include that notebook that I just showed here on the table without having to create a new notebook. So here, like sample note. Here, like lecture subheader 1, subheader 2. So like just to show that, and like I can edit it. So like I'll just type randomly here, and then go back, and then try to access the notebook template, and then see I can open this. And it shows the edits that I made, which shows that they're one in the same file and not a entirely new document. And that's the beauty of Notion, is that there's a lot of, you can access the same file in many ways through the relational database system. So like say I reviewed this note on the date today. So date today is July 26th. And as I mentioned in my spaced repetition video, that in retrospective timetables, you have to rate how you felt about your review for that day. So like say, oh, I didn't really get it, so I'll just rate it like a 2 out of 5. And so that will indicate to me when I go back to review in a couple days time, I will go and review it again. So let's say like 2 days after, on July 28th, I reviewed it and I felt more confident, so I gave it a 4. So like having seen that, when I go back to review, I will prioritize reviewing the notes that I have lower ratings on. So say I gave this note. Let's say I last reviewed it on July 25, and then I gave it a 3. And then this one, July 24, like I gave it a 5. So when I go to review, so like here, sample note, like second revision, let's just say like on the same day, July 28th, I reviewed this sample note because I gave it a 2, and then I'm deciding, I only have time to review one other note, and I have to decide between sample note 3 and sample note 2, and like, I see that I rated sample note 3 a 5 out of 5, so like I really got the topic after I reviewed it. So given that I only have a limited amount of time to review, I'm deciding between these two topics, sample note 3, sample note 2. If I saw that I rated sample note 2 lower, I will focus on making more effort to making the time to review sample note 2 compared to sample note 3, because it's be more worth my time to review something that I know I'm weak at compared to something I'm already strong at, and this is something that I discuss in depth in my spaced repetition video, which I'll link down below. If you like this video, please check out my productivity playlist where I give specific tips on how you can become successful in the upcoming school year. Also, check out my How to Study series where I go over the evidence-based revision tips that I use in my revisions for medical school. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.